So this is just an example of a warm-up that you might want to use before you teach these classes. I do a warm-up like this before I teach my Band-ITS Barre sessions here in Sydney. So we're going to start off finding our postural stack, tripod foot, soft knees, middle pelvis, thorax over pubic bone, broad lengthened shoulders, and our imagery of helium balloons on the head. Checking in that we have good diaphragmatic breath, side to side expansion, forwards and back expansion, and maybe a little bit of awareness of our deep tummy recruitment. I'm then going to work through all of our body areas in a three-dimensional warm-up. So we're actually going to start off looking at the feet, and we're going to look at pronation, supination. So placing the hands on the pelvis, just rotating the pelvis left and right. What we want to see here is the ability for the feet to supinate and pronate and back again. It's a little foot dance. Make sure you keep contact with your first toe joint on the floor or your first toe knuckle. From here, I'm then just going to warm the feet up with a little bit of short foot. So pressing the pads of the toes down into the floor, and we should feel waking up an activity in the small muscles in the underneath of the foot. It's like a mini doming exercise. So you should see just a very small lift of the toe joints and the muscles underneath the foot waking up. From there, we're going to track straight up to the pelvis, and we're going to soften the knees a little bit and work in some sagittal plane tilts forwards and back. So that's posterior tilt, through center, anterior tilt. We're aiming to try and get even movement in both directions, thinking of pivoting through that hip joint here. Hopefully you will notice that as I tuck under, my thighs externally rotate and my feet supinate, and as I come in again, the opposite happens. My thighs internally rotate and my feet head towards pronation. We're then going to come and look at frontal plane pelvic motion. So, bending one knee and following. This comes into a hike. Right hike, left hike. We want to make sure the pelvis again stays level as we come through here, and then it's not coming what I call disco hip with the bottom sticking out behind us. It remains wedged between two sheets of glass. We want to keep even weight bearing on both of our feet as well. Coming then into transverse plane, the body will stay stacked, and we're going to just rotate through the pelvis. So maybe thinking of gliding forwards from each one of our pelvic bones. Again, we should see the motion continue through into the feet, getting that pronation and supination. Last one on the pelvis is a lateral shift or frontal plane shift. So we're going to let the pelvis fall to the side as far as we can. And this is really nice to mobilize our lateral line and also wake up glute med and min at the side of the hips. You should see a natural bend in the spine as the hips move over. Watch that you're not getting this motion, double shearing. We're then going to jump up to our next bony area, which is the thorax, and coming back, thinking of sagittal plane again. I like to just connect with my thumbs on my breastbone here, working through forwards and backwards tilt. You always want to think of remaining stacked over your center point. So from side on, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, pivoting around on center. It's not forwards and backwards. It's not true flexion and extension. It's a pivot of the rib cage. We want to then have a look at side motion. So again, pivoting through my thumbs, side to side. Now if we keep the eyes on the horizon here, you're going to already get mobility into the neck. So you can see here, I'm in right side bend thorax, left side bend neck. And when I'm here, bending backwards and the head will tilt forwards. So the neck's doing flexion as the rib cage tilts back. And then we have rotation. Pelvis is going to stay facing forwards, and we isolate the rotation in the rib cage. Eyes looking forwards, their therefore getting counter-rotation in the neck. And then we look at our shifting again. So this is a little bit more like our rib isolations that we might use already in class. Again, we're looking for equal movement range each time. So that's pelvis, thorax, neck has been done by default. We're then going to come and look at the shoulders. So floating the arms to the side, we're going to rotate one arm in, keep going, keep going, keep going, until the shoulder blade comes up and forwards, and then back again. The shoulder blade is going to then pull into the thorax, so you're getting more mobility here through the rib cage area, and a nice sense of stretching through your posterior sling. The shoulder blade's going to pull up and lengthen away from that opposite sit bone. The opposite version to this, we're going to take the arms forwards, rotate this way, and it's going to pull you backwards. So we're actually opening through this line, but again, driven from the hands. This also sends a lovely mobilizer into my neck here, stretching into sternocleidomastoid and my traps. Coming up, rotate, coming up. So really good spinal mobility, driven by the arms and by the shoulders. Now, that might be enough, and then you can move into your program, because you have moved your joints in all three directions. If you want to continue on, we can add in some motion into the hip flexors, adductors and hamstrings. So, starting with our hip flexors, we'll have our feet parallel, and we're going to slowly bend this front leg with our momentum coming forwards. Keep on repeating this motion, and you should start to feel a gentle opening in this front right hip flexor. My heel is lifting up, and my emphasis is on the back fifth toe joint. This is actually going to allow supination in that rear foot, and we want nice, active, soft pronation in the front foot. Once we've got a good motion going and some gentle opening here, I'm going to add a reach to the ceiling. So as I reach up to the ceiling, you can see this encourages a side bend, which elongates the stretch down this front line even more. So I've got body coming forward, sagittal, reaching now, adding in frontal. Then if I want to really complete the motion, I'm going to add in a transverse plane, drive up, and now I have sagittal, frontal, transverse, pelvis, thorax going in opposite directions. And that would be your full mobilizer for the front of the hip. Come back, check in. Does my body feel different? And hopefully this side feels like it's been lengthened. You would then repeat again, slowly coming in. Feel the hip flexor first. And it's actually okay for your pelvis to have a little hike here. And it will also travel a little bit slower, so you'll end up with rotation away from the lead leg. So slowly coming in, add the arm up, and then we're going to add in our other arm. Three-dimensional hip flexion stretch. Coming now and having a look at our adductors or inner thighs. We'll have our feet wide up. We're going to bend the knee and follow the motion. So our inner thighs are decelerating and lengthening. Pelvis staying level initially as we come over. And then I'm going to add in some direction. So I'm going to come towards, and this is towards the front of the inner thigh and also a little bit of hip flexor. And I'm going to reach with my shoulder blade. The scapula does the reaching. Then I'm going to come back and round. So I'm going to reach back in this direction. Again, it's always rhythmic. This foot, fifth toe, stays planted, and that way I get more elongation through my inner thigh. My pelvis rotates around, and again, I'm reaching through this shoulder blade. Then bringing it back up to center, I'm going to reach up to the ceiling. Final addition, forwards. I have now what's called a type 1 mobilizer. So my body comes over, stretches into the inner thigh. I reach up, brings me into side flexion. I reach forwards, brings me into rotation. And my side flexion and rotation are in different directions. Then I repeat on the other side. Slowly coming over, couple of repetitions, adding the diagonal variation in, coming back with the other variation. So this is more at the back of the inner thighs, catching a little bit of hamstring, adding a high reach, and then high reach and forwards reach. Ceiling, front of the room. Always thinking rhythmic, coming in and out, always thinking end of range. Finally, coming to have a look at your hamstrings. The motion this time is going to come backwards. Now, you can either come up on your heel or keep your foot flat, stronger up on your heel. If you come onto your heel, we're going to lead the toes and rest on the outside of the heel. So we're going to come back, sitting, and come up again. Reach and come up. So from side on, I'm actually quite flexed through the spine, traveling backwards, decelerating this way. Imagine that your heel is stuck in a piece of glue and you're tractioning your leg backwards. Don't push down into the knee. Then we're going to add our variations in. So we're going to come foot turned out, lateral hammies, foot turned in, medial hammies, center, outside, inside. Or if you want to, you can drive your arm across, foot stays centered, and then drive it in. The pelvis is now the thing that is moving. The pelvis is now the thing that is driving that three-dimensional motion. And then again, repeat on the other side. Start a rhythm, in and out. Really think of tractioning, decelerating, lengthening, adding in your foot variation, turn out, turn in, maybe adding the arm variation and keeping the foot centered. So we've now looked at three-dimensional movements: feet, pelvis, thorax, shoulders and neck. And we've looked at a three-dimensional hip flexor opener, adductors and hamstrings. Doesn't take that long. You might spend 5-10 minutes of it, and then get everybody down, bar set up, and off you go.